Good morning, members of the board. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to present the cyber resilience strategy for the next 24 months. Without further ado, I will get straight into it. As per the agenda, I will cover a few different topics. The objective is to provide you with insight into our risk posture and to request funding for strategic initiatives we have identified that will ultimately address this risk and support the business objectives. To set the scene, I would like to start by sharing a short story of a group of hikers that set out to climb Mount Everest in 1996. Now, on Mount Everest, there's a rule that says if you don't reach the summit at a certain time of day, you have to abandon your attempt. This particular day, these hikers did not reach the summit at the specified time and they should have turned around. Instead, they continued. They got to the summit too late and they had to climb down in darkness, and sadly, they all died. And we see something similar in business today. We see that companies commit to a 3-year plan or a 5-year strategy. Midway through, evidence will start to appear that the current strategy is a bad idea and they really should start re-looking and readjusting the strategy. We find ourselves today in a similar position. On the one hand, we've got an expanded regulatory environment, new regulations coming up, specifically applicable to us because we operate in 7 African countries. We've got an evolving threat landscape. We see the introduction of generative AI is adding to this. And then we also see that surveys are showing that customers are now actually expecting better security from their service providers. On the other hand, we've introduced new ways of working since post COVID. We are missing basic security controls. A number of our assessments and threat scenarios actually indicate that we are missing some key security controls. Our human firewall is quite weak. It's not what it should be. And we also have in excess of 1,000 vendors and third parties and suppliers in our ecosystem, and we just don't have a handle on it. So when we set out to develop the strategy, we started by understanding what is important to our business. And we know that currently there's a big focus on converting paper record to digital format. We know the business wants to be a data-driven organization and use analytics. We know that we have multiple different record management systems and we're looking to consolidate onto one platform. There's a big focus on training and development to support the digital transformation strategy of the organization, and we also know that the business is looking for better efficiencies and better management of the vendor and supplier landscape. So what we did was we developed our cyber resilience strategy to support those initiatives. So we looked at, can we develop the strategy to support the strategic initiatives at the same time reducing all the risks and at the same time ensuring a regulatory compliance in all the countries in which we operate. Now, we did an assessment with PwC and we found that from an industry perspective, we are actually below average in terms of cyber maturity. We are at a 3 on a scale of 1 to 5. The industry average is 3.8, but our strategy is developed to take us to a 4.2, which is above industry average. We saw across 5 different threat scenarios that we are very likely to be targeted by state-sponsored actors, and we actually are going to present 4 different options, but we are recommending option C because that is the perfect mix of strategic initiatives to manage our risk, to support the business initiatives, and to take us to that target maturity level. When we developed the strategy, we followed a systematic and methodical process. We understand that securing an organization is not something that can happen in a silo, and therefore we consulted extensively with all critical and essential stakeholders, and this includes the Audit and Risk Committee, the CFO, the CIO, as well as the Chief Risk Officer. And we wanted to do this to ensure that our strategy is holistic, it considers all of the strategic initiatives of the organization. As I mentioned earlier, we worked with PwC to perform a number of assessments and identify those high risk areas for our business. I want to specifically bring your attention to the 2 very high risks. The first one is S4, and that speaks to regulatory non compliance. Now, this is really our inability to adhere to privacy and data regulations in the countries in which we operate. And the consequences there for us could be legal action, it could be financial penalties, and most importantly, probably reputational damage to us, and we could lose our license to operate in those countries. The other risk is really around ransomware attacks, and this is something that could cripple our business. We saw recently that one of our competitors, NY Health, they were actually out of business for 11 days. In addition, they also received the 15 million US dollar um, for penalty from the information regulator for not implementing basic security controls. So what we had done was we had identified a number of strategic initiatives to really speak to these risks, and we wanted to make sure that we are able to drive down those very high risks, make sure that we can reduce either the likelihood or the impact, or ideally both, to ensure that in the event of something happening, we are able to demonstrate to the regulator that we have taken all reasonable measures. We've got the basic controls implemented. If we look, for example, at regulatory non-compliance, we have DLP listed, so data loss prevention. That's quite a key control to help us there. Security awareness training. We've got implementing a security operations center and multi-factor authentication on all of our critical assets. Those are quite key controls that would go a long way to demonstrating our commitment to security if ever we are audited by external regulators, in addition to the protection that it provides. From a ransomware perspective, we are looking at immutable backup, so making sure we're building in resilience and we've got the ability to recover if in the unfortunate event of a successful ransomware attack against us. So, as I mentioned earlier, we worked with PwC to perform a number of threat scenarios and risk assessments and identify those top cyber risks that apply to our business. Now, what I want to bring your attention to is the section that I've highlighted, the target risk rating and the business initiatives supported. So, for every risk we identified strategic cybersecurity initiatives to address that risk. But what we are trying to achieve is, number one, we want to bring down the risk rating. So we want to ensure that we take a higher risk, we bring it down to low or medium. And then also we want to make sure we are supporting the business initiatives. If we look at the first one, for example, social engineering, really, somebody sending a phishing or malicious email to one of our employees. Now we know that our organization has also highlighted that training and development is quite key in terms of enabling the digital transformation strategy. What we have done is we have aligned our cyber initiatives to support that objective. So we've got implementing a secure culture, looking at a tool for security awareness and training. And by doing that, we improve the human firewall and we're supporting the initiative of the business for training and development, for example. So what is quite key to understand here is that it is important for us to drive down risk, but it is equally important for us to support the business initiatives as well. Now, the scope and complexity of what needs to be done cannot be understated. We are not under the illusion that everything can be done all at once. So, what we have done is we looked at what are the quick wins, the low hanging fruit, the things we can do that will give us the most value, the most protection in the shortest amount of time. And we've identified these things in three phases. So, phase one, we will implement things that will give us the most value, followed by phase two, which will be along the lines of 18 months. And then we're looking at 24 months for the remainder of the controls. And those controls are really the ones that is highly complex, involves a lot of external stakeholder engagement, and has quite a high number of dependencies. As I conclude, I would like to remind you of the recent incident that impacted one of our competitors in Y Health. They were out of business for 11 days, in addition to a $15 million fine they received from the information regulator. And that's not even mentioning the reputational damage that they have suffered as a result of this. We are requesting funding for option C. By doing this, you will enable us to support the strategic business objectives. You will enable us to address all the critical and high risk findings, and you will also enable us to reach our target maturity by April next year. The stakes are too high for our organization, our customers, and our employees not to take cybersecurity serious. I want to end off with our motto: strategy is how we play, but governance and culture is how we win. Thank you very much for your time.